Hello, you cheeky blighters. Hello. Don't know where that came from. But yeah, it's good to see you. One of my favorite subjects are sort of a more upbeat than some of the deep, dark horror that I've been discovering and looking at recently. But I've been reading some interviews with some of the remaining Carry On female actors. And I thought it was really interesting, their take on it. Obviously, they're of a different age now. They're all getting on in years. Some are no longer with us. But I found these interviews really interesting, particularly because I know that there's a lot of charity work going on at the moment with Maggie Centres. I know a lot of the Carry On actresses do there. I met a few of them there. And yeah, just, everyone I met they were lovely. And I've done quite a few videos on Carry On and on the live section of my channel. So if you want to have a look at those, talking about Carry On in the future and a few other bits and pieces about Carry Ons that I've added onto the channel. Obviously, there's the little clip there that had some of my favorite characters, favorite films from the series there. Now I see these much like the Confessions film. I think it's very harmless, silly, cheeky fun. I know other opinions are available. That's fine. That's okay. That's all right. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Not always the most hilarious. Some of the films in the series I'm not a massive fan of, but I would say good 75% of them I think are great. My favorite being, not that you asked, but my favorite being Carry On Abroad, Chippings and things like that. So I wanted to really delve into, sometimes we get angry or upset on behalf of other people, which I think the important thing here is communication and asking if that person needs help or is upset or any of these things first before diving into being a sort of a, on your horse and like a knight. So I'm going to have a paraphrase and go through some of the interviews and some sections that I've read recently from some of the female actors from the Carry On series. Okay, so one of the main quotes, one of the articles that I read said, "We didn't worry about a few dirty laughs. The Carry On women didn't mind playing nags, bra burners, and crumpets." So I didn't say that. That's what they said. It's on the poster behind me and on the thumbnail that I made. So the ones that we talk about, a couple of them were in the video that we saw. So the ones that I read interviews with were Amanda Barrie, who Carry On Cleo, Valerie, easy for me to say, Valerie Leon, who I've met, who's lovely, I've been in some Hammer films as well, and Sheila Hancock, who I have a strange sort of family link with, related to her father-in-law. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. And their memories of being on Carry On. Now, it says here, the first interview was with Valerie Leon. She still lives in West London, and watching a few clips on the phone, on the journalist's phone. And I'm just reading a little bit about this. In the film, she's watching herself play a sales assistant in a camping shop. I remember that one. And there's all kinds of shenanigans going on inside these tents. And then like the tent falls down and Charles Hawtrey and Valerie Leon come out of the tent looking all disheveled. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." The gentleman kept touching things, and then Charles Hawtrey, obviously, watch out, ladies. Charles Hawtrey's on the loose. He says, "Splendid girl, so helpful." Did you? And he's like, "Did you know she's been showing me how to stick the pole up?" So obviously, and I'll be honest with you, if I see any innuendo in any of these things, I'm just going to whip it out. Right? I'm just going to whip it out. Any innuendo, I'm not going to stand for it. So it's pretty much, that sums it up, doesn't it? That sums up my terrible joke too. Sums up Carry On. Seaside postcards, do we still have those? Saucy postcards. Scantily clad for high camp. Obviously, Kenneth Williams ups the ante. I've been reading his diaries for a long time, taking me ages, but I love how he can change his opinion on people from day to day. Absolute beastly people, and then he loves them dearly, Bernard Bresslaw, Sir James, ogling, lecherous fellas often, Actually Bernard Bresslaw, classically trained actor, very, very good actor as well. Sid James, I think, found his niche. Now, obviously his laugh. So Valerie Leon talks about the how escapist these things are, and maybe that's why people still like them now. We still have a lot of the same things that we want to escape from, if not more. Yeah, she was remembering those lines and talking about them in the article that I read, which was quite nice. She was in 6 carry-ons. She was in Carry On Up the Khyber, the first one in 1968, just handed out fruit. She was in a harem, and that was filmed at Pinewood. Yeah, my dad's uncle used to work at Pinewood, and for us, London was like, a bazillion miles away, and I think my dad went to see him when he was a kid. So my dad still tells me a little bit about that. And I read quite a bit in the Robin Asquith book that I was reading recently, quite a lot about Pinewood there as well. And she talks about auditioning through wearing swimsuits. So then her favorite, she talks about being Carry On Up the Jungle, a send up of the Tarzan story. She was from the Lost World of Aphrodisia, and she was the scantily clad leader of the all-woman Lubby-Dubby tribe. Lubby-Dubby. And she was the boss. They had to do as I said, she said. Now, later on in this article that I was reading, and there's a few more that I read as well, there was one, sadly, as they go through, they start telling you about all the ones who've passed away. So, but Amanda Barrie, who I saw at a film festival, and she was hilarious. She is such a funny lady. And, she's had such a interesting kind of acceptance of herself as she's got older, which I think has left her as quite a cool, interesting person to hear talk. So she talks about being in Carry On Cabby. Obviously, she's Cleopatra in Carry On Cleo. She's 88 now. Obviously, there's no Hattie Jakes, no Joan Sims, Barbara Windsor, and Jackie Piper as well. And there's an interview with her. She doesn't say too much, but Sheila Hancock, I thought, was an interesting one. So she was in Carry On Cleo. She was Cenopod. Now, I think aren't Cenopods like laxatives? So Cenopod, which was like a caveman's nagging wife. In those days, we were always nags or tits and arse. Those were our roles. The nagging wife is such a fucking cliche. I love the fact she's 91 and saying that's so funny. She had a young baby at the time, looked after in the dressing room by her mum. She had to rush out for feeds during breaks in nagging. That's so funny. So all 5 of them had fond memories of their times in Carry On. Let's see. Franklin, who was the farmer's daughter in Carry On Camping. We never found out who she was pregnant by. Joan, Barbara, she talks about how good their timing were, particularly the ones who got bigger roles, their timing being so good. And I think that's true as well. Like Joan Sims, highly underrated. Even when she was getting older, I mean, she was in that sitcom with bloody Jim Davison, and she was still like the best thing in it because she was just knocking spots off him. Somebody with actual talent. She remembers asking the producer, Amanda Barrie, asking the producer if they provided a car, and he was like, they're well known for being tight. And I think all the money now is like, in terms of rights and residuals is zero. She got £500 for the first Carry On film. And she said, does say about, and Amanda Barrie does say everyone was very kind and helpful. It's interesting. These films that people complain about, whether it's Confessions or Carry On, like most of the people, like their experiences were like just amazing. Just everyone got on so well and was kind and lovely to each other. And all the people who we were told were good, moral, upstanding people, certainly ones you know all the names like certain BBC people and DJs and other celebrities turned out to be absolute, more than just rascals. So Hancock also mentioned a really interesting thing here. I thought this is really good. She said that she was in a play with Anthony Hopkins, and all he wanted to do was talk to her about carry-ons. just imagine him sat there as Hannibal Lecter, just eating some fava beans and watching W.C. Boggs, carry on at your convenience. She talked about Kenneth Williams playing pranks, Charles Hawtrey, not so much being. Charles Hawtrey always comes across as a really sad character, but also really super promiscuous and really into his sailors. That's what I've read anyway. In his sandwich, in his bag he would have a sandwich, Woodbines, and a newspaper, and then Kenneth Williams would hide it. It would cause huge upset. That sounds like. And then he's also very sensitive, Kenneth Williams. So in his diaries, sometimes he'd behave in a certain way, and then he'd be his own worst kind of critic, and really have a go at himself for some of the things that he did. Hancock talks about Hawtrey being an eccentric original, and Sir James getting them to put bets on for him. Apparently, Amanda Barrie had a thing with Sid James as well. Everybody loved him, obviously. Barbara Windsor did too. Amanda Barrie, she couldn't drive. She was supposed to drive a taxi. If you remember in Carry On Cabby, they had like the female group of taxi drivers. She burned her foot on the donkey milk in Carry On Cleo. So obviously some of these things are a little bit, very British, really, isn't it? We can't take anything too seriously, and we're clumsy and awkward, and the things that you're seeing on camera are probably replicated behind the scenes to a certain degree. Apparently, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton had filmed at Pinewood. They used the same set, and they heard that Richard Burton really enjoyed Carry On Cleo. So yeah, she was offered further ones, but Amanda Barrie this is, and she was turned down. She turned them down because she was working at the theatre and wanted to build a theatre career. A lot of people would kind of look down upon that, other actors and actresses and things like that. What else have we got? People talking about the different lines and things like infamy, they all got infamy. So people just absolutely love quoting and remembering these things. They do live on. Some of the writing's great. Some of it is, absolute tosh. And like I would say, I would recommend nobody to watch Carry On Emmanuel. I mean, obviously, some people might like it. It might be your jam, but for me, it's quite a sad film. It makes me feel quite sad, so it's not one for me. But like Carry On Abroad, I would watch it 10 times in a row. It's great. You haven't even got I'm just reading some of it as well. They're saying things like all the money I spent on a posh education, and you're pregnant and you didn't even have the manners to ask with whom am I having the pleasure, which is quite funny. Peter Butterworth, man, I need to do a video just on Peter Butterworth. What an incredibly talented guy he was. Obviously, I think Kenneth Connor and Kenneth Williams, two of my absolute favourites, but Peter Butterworth, just so good. I mean, Carry On Abroad, that's his film, really, isn't it? In my opinion. I'm a big fan of Bernard Bresslaw, but he's only allowed to do one character in every film, really, isn't he? The same one. Some of it, Carrying Up the Khyber, there's some dodgy stuff in there. They talk about that in some of the articles, but also they say, that there was things on mainstream TV like that at the time as well. It wasn't like Carry On films were doing these things. That's not to say it's acceptable, but just to say that it is definitely of its time, and it wasn't the only one doing it. It was kind of not even seen as a strange thing. So like dodgy racial stereotypes and such. But if you look at it as a time capsule, I think that's actually you should look at that almost like a learning moment as well. And we're like, some of these things are definitely transferable and just as funny now. Some of them you're like, but you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say I hate the whole thing. Like most things, it's life's a bit of a pick and mix, isn't it? So Sheila Hancock talks about the word crumpet and Sir James using the word crumpet, which apparently she said was an affliction that affected the industry. And directors and producers offering of operations to have things made bigger, things made smaller, circles under the eyes, removed and all that kind of stuff. And I guess that's still the case in some ways now, otherwise not overtly, possibly not overtly. I don't know if it's the same in the fashion industry more than film industry. I don't know, but obviously we know that there's some horrendous things going on behind the scenes in the film industry that start to come to light the last few years. So you know, it's nice that Rogers wrote to them and said, as long as you had your horizons broadened and you'll work with us again, and all that kind of fun stuff. Um, they talk about wolf whistling culture and things like that. And again, like I'm glad that that doesn't. I never understood things like that anyway. It wasn't just. I always thought it was awkward and weird and strange behavior. Anyway, what was someone going to go whistle at them? They go, yeah, just I'll meet you around the corner. Like, I don't know, don't like that. So yeah, they also talked about not questioning any of the stuff, but how it's these steps, and sort of great female comedians writing for themselves and things like that. And obviously, somebody like Hattie Jakes, wouldn't suffer fools and was also very, very talented. As Sheila Hancock talks about Germaine Greer as well, and like kind of learning through reading her books, and people sometimes forget about the impact of her. So but I think what what they all kind of come together at the end of this and talk a little bit about how it's escapism, very gentle, a lot of fun, and maybe we don't live in as fun a world as they did then. I mean, it's easy to say with those rose-tinted spectacles because there was, they were eating bloody tripe and onions and liver, and things were pretty grimy. And I remember even in the 80s, well, I won't even go there, but like, it was bloody freezing sitting in front of those little gas fires. Anyway, so it said, we're only just come out of World War II, so a few dirty laughs weren't all that worried about. So maybe there's a little bit of, things we didn't have the time, people didn't have the time to be as offended about it. I don't know. Maybe that's the point of what Amanda Barrie's saying. She was saying the public started to accept homosexuality because of Frankie Howard and Kenneth Williams. It was on the cusp of everything changing, accepting homosexuality. I don't know if those actors would agree with that. I don't know. And she was saying about the how feminists were portrayed, and it was very cartoony, but then everything else was as well. And Amanda Barrie talks about herself, after all those years, ended up marrying a woman herself, and kind of her evolution in life and how things change over time. But she doesn't have, I'm just paraphrasing here, but doesn't have that kind of, doesn't have any anger towards it, and sees it as very harmless fun. She said a little bit of objectification hasn't done me any harm, which again I think she's just got a good line in one-liners as well. So the thing that I found the most interesting was like the in Carry On Any Convenience, there's bits about unionization, and like you can tell that this is sort of the very upper class Rogers trying to squash unions and make it seem like all they want to do is go on strike all the time, and this kind of thing. And that's the only one where I think it's like overtly political. I don't mind it as a film, but there's little bits in it where I think, oh yeah, it's yeah. Anyway, and it talks a little bit about ITVX cutting out certain things, and having warnings and things like that on it. I mean, I find it very hard to get upset about those things. Like there's loads of stuff going on in the world. People are, think about the amount of kids that haven't got decent food. Get angry about that. Don't get angry about a warning on a Carry On film on ITVX. Don't get all red in the face about it and have a heart attack about that. Get really angry about the amount of food banks there are. Get really angry about that if you want to get angry about something. That's just my opinion. If you want to get angry about a warning on an ITVX Carry On film, that's up to you, I guess. That's up to you. You know, it does say, and Sheila Hancock makes a really good point. She says they'd be really good for youngsters to study and discuss and see about what parts they find unacceptable, what parts they find silly, and you know, actually having the discussion. And that goes back to a conversation I had about censorship and the child's play films and video nasties that I've done on this channel. So yeah, I think she's right. I've not heard Sheila Hancock say a lot of stuff that I don't agree with generally. She seems pretty awesome, really switched on for 91, but that doesn't surprise me. My nan was as sharp as a tack at 101. So, you know, I'm interested in your thoughts on the Carry On films. That was really interesting to go over some of those interviews that I've read recently, some of them for charity, some of them for different newspapers. I think The Independent was one of them. But I noticed that a lot of these ladies who were in Carry On films were giving their time for the Maggie's Centres, and I know personally how helpful the Maggie's Cancer Centres are. So if you want to, if you're watching this channel and you want to donate to something, and you're thinking, oh, all these certain people who stop me with clipboards on the streets and all that, and I'm not sure where it's going, and you want to give a £5 or a couple of quid or £1 to something worthwhile, I really do recommend the Maggie's Centres. I will say personally, they have been, you know, incredible for people in my family, and obviously all these Carry On ladies are giving their time to it as well. So, you know, if you like a Carry On film, give £1 to the Maggie's Centres. So let's leave on that positive one. So I'm going to play the little video for you again, leave you with a smile on your face, so to speak. We were. And no, it's been really cool chatting with you about Carry On. What's your favourite Carry On film? Interesting question. Thanks, Matt. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.